The Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Raising Cane studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Raising Cane studio downtown in the capital city on this Tuesday. Hope your work week's off to a good start. Appreciate you hanging out with us on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Brought to you by Mint's Information Technology. Jordan Kitchens, Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos. And we got lots to get to today. Glen West in 30 minutes. He was there as Lane Kiffin met with the media for the first time about an hour and a half ago. So we'll talk to Glen about that. Sharif Ishak in hour number 2. We'll talk Saints with him. I also want to talk about some Saints with an LSU lean. What about Mansoor Delane yesterday? Is that a fit for New Orleans? We'll talk about it a little bit later on. LSU baseball back on the diamond tonight against Louisiana Tech. I'll give you my full preview of that one. But we're starting with football. LSU was on the practice field for the first time under Lane Kiffin. That is our opening drive.
Welcome to the big league.
It's time for Hunt's opening drive. Presented by Fabry Chevrolet GMC in St. Francisville.
I got to tell you, things are a little different under Lane Kiffin out there at practice than they were under Brian Kelly. We got about 20 minutes today, the first day of spring workouts. And then we were ushered on off the practice field. As I've said many times, that is perfectly acceptable to me. It's not going to produce a world of content for you all, but I think we gleaned quite a bit today in terms of the vibes out there at practice. Lane Kiffin's got the aux cord. Not literally at the moment, but I'm pretty sure he's in control of what they're playing out there. We got Morgan Wallen going. We got the Chainsmokers going. There's an upbeat vibe to the music that's popping. And it was a fun little 20 minutes to go out there and see a little bit of football today. And I did think that we picked up on some pertinent things. Let's start with the headliners here. That, of course, begins with the quarterback, Sam Leavitt. What can he do? What can he do? Is he here? Is he there? Sam Leavitt is at practice. And I can tell you, based on this being the first day, Sam Leavitt is not taking the spring off. He's recovering from Liz Frank surgery, but he was out there. He was in his jersey. He was in a helmet. He was working with the first unit in terms of the handoff drills. He was throwing on individuals with the receivers and dry routes. He was walking around. When he throws, you can't tell much of a difference. Now, when the quarterbacks did their light jog to the next drill, yes, you can tell Sam Leavitt is favoring his foot a little bit. But he can absolutely get back there and take snaps. He can survey things. He's not sitting off to the side. He's throwing the football. And you would imagine that over the course of the next 3 weeks, he will progressively do a little bit more. He's not going to push it. He's not going to be out there on 11-on-11 full pads. He's limited in what he can do, but he's not incapacitated. He's out there and getting a little bit of work in at the quarterback spot. As far as Whit Weeks goes, that's the other guy I was curious to see today. And Whit Weeks was there. He was in a uniform. He did not practice. He did not put a helmet on. He did not go through the drills. He was there watching the linebackers. And he doesn't really need to do spring football. He's been in Blake Baker's defense for 2 years. He knows what's going on out there. He's involved. He's helping some of the younger guys and some of the newer guys out there. I will tell you this, and this is a personal thing for me as I was out there, so you kind of see what lens I'm looking through here. We got out on the practice field, and here they come. And we know that it's going to be quick. So you got the notebook out. You got the pen out. I've been doing this for 17 years. Like, okay, let's get to writing. And they got into immediately on the field we were closest to, they got into an 11-on-11. It was a half-speed walk-through, snap it, run the play, spot the ball, snap it, run the play, spot the ball. So for me, when I see that, okay, let's go through the lineup. What's the offense? And I'm just writing down numbers. What's the defense? I'm writing down numbers, and I put them on my sheet like in a formation so that I can go back and check my notes and see who the players were. Because you realize there's 40 transfers and 15 freshmen out there. There's 65 new players that I've never seen before out there on the field. So I'm writing numbers. And plus, some of the guys that are returners are in new numbers. So, like, it's a free-for-all out there. I'm writing, and immediately as I start to transcribe who I was looking at, I went, oh, that was the second team. I just assumed it was the starters. They came out first. I recognized Longstreet. I figured Leavitt wasn't practicing potentially. Like, okay, this is probably the first team, and I'm just writing. And then I got to it and went, oh. And so I went through, and in my lineup, as it looked, it was Bryson Martinez, Jaquan Sprinkle, William Satterwhite, Darren Stray, and Bo Bordelon up front. I go, okay, well, that's the second team. There's no Braylon Moore. There's no Jordan Seaton. Like, these are Bryson Martinez is a freshman. Jaquan Sprinkle you bring in from the transfer portal. William Satterwhite's probably your backup to Braylon Moore. Like, I'm looking at that. At wide receiver, Trey Brown, who, theoretically could be a starter on this team. Phillip Wright, the only returning wide receiver, so I was thinking that could be potentially a starting player. Malik Elzy, who comes in from Illinois, and wide receiver was with that group. Malachi Thomas was the tight end, and Dylan Jones was the running back. But clearly, that's a look at the second team. Defensively, there are more names you'll recognize from this second team. Some returners there. Gabe Relaford was out there. That was good to see after he obviously missed a lot of time there during the fall. Brandon Brown and Sean Washington were the defensive tackles. Dylan Carpenter was the other edge. Those are all returning players. Tylen Singleton, Zach Weeks, CJ Jim Coyley were the linebackers. Those are all returning players. Michael Turner and Jakeem Jackson were the two corners, returning players. Fahim Delane was back there at safety, Mansoor's younger brother, and Jace Thomas was the other safety there. Let me start with that group at safety because they were closest to me during individuals. A lot of folks went and watched the quarterbacks throw to some wide receivers that was on the other field, and I did see some of that, but I found myself as the only guy sitting there watching the safeties, and as I'm looking at them, I'm going, I told you all this yesterday. I was like, this is a talented-looking group, and it's a mature-looking group. I looked at that group, and Deshaun Spears and Ty Benefield are both long and rangy and filled out, not like skinny at all. You wouldn't think that because they're third-year players. I liked what I saw from those two guys. Aiden Hall, the freshman from Carr, was out there. He doesn't really look like a freshman. There are plenty of players out there that do look like freshmen. First time you saw Harlan Berry at running back, looks like a freshman. When you first laid eyes on Michael Turner, who you still look at him and he looks like a freshman. He's a third-year player. But look, Aiden Hall does not look like a freshman. He looks filled out, big. TaMarcus Cooley's back. Fahim Delane is big and physical. Like, that's a physical group with Deshaun Spears, Ty Benefield, Aiden Hall, TaMarcus Cooley, Fahim Delane. I enjoyed watching those guys go through some drills. And then what added to that, because I wrote this in my practice report before Lane Kiffin ever took the podium. And then he goes to the podium and said something that really, really, really popped to me. He was talking about the work ethic of Trey'Dez Green. And he mentioned that Trey'Dez Green's skill set is off the charts, so is his work ethic, and Jordan Seaton is in that same breath. Well, Trey'Dez Green was the number one tight end in the country and a five-star recruit, and has been a really good player for 2 years. Jordan Seaton was a five-star recruit, a top 10 player in the country, a 2-year starter at offensive tackle, and a potential first-round pick. I'm not surprised he's paired those two guys together. And you're going, Hunt, why are you talking about Jordan Seaton and Trey'Dez Green when you're talking about the safeties? Well, he mentioned in that same breath, he mentioned three guys: Trey'Dez Green, Jordan Seaton, and Ty Benefield. That is very high praise to me, considering that Ty Benefield has one practice under his belt. But Lane Kiffin's obviously seen it up on the tape, and so that tells me right there, when you mention Benefield with Trey'Dez Green and Jordan Seaton, who are going to go in the first round of the next draft, you've already determined that this guy's an impact player on this team. I'm penciling Ty Benefield in immediately. And he looked the part. I saw him today, looked very, very good. I saw a few other things on the field that I thought were noteworthy. Chris Kiffin was working with the linebackers, and Blake Baker was working with the stars. The stars are taking that role that kind of Harold Perkins played. Major Burns worked at it 2 years ago. It's a hybrid safety linebacker nickel type deal. Y'all are well aware of that. Zach Weeks spent some time there. Keelan Moses as well, who just looks huge out there. Devon Keys was there. Theo Grace, who's a newcomer, and then Jake Ibieta from the walk-on side. Those guys were kind of working at the star spot. I would assume moving forward that, like, Deshaun Spears, Ty Benefield, even TaMarcus Cooley potentially, like, there will be some more defensive back flavor to that group, I think, in time. But today, on the first day of spring ball, which you're not going to take a ton from, a lot of linebackers who are a little bit maybe down the pecking order were out there doing that. I labeled this section in my practice report today as Lanyap, just a few other things that me and Matt noticed out there on the practice field. Tyree Holloway, a transfer from West Florida who's got speed to burn, had a drop on the crossing routes. That was noteworthy. There weren't a lot of those from the time we were out there, and he did have a drop. In terms of just how the guys looked in the pads, Well, some of them had shoulder pads on, some of them didn't, but how guys looked in the uniform. Jackson Harris and Malik Elzy at the wide receiver positions. Harris comes from Hawaii. Elzy comes from Illinois. They are both very big and physical, looked the part as mature wide receivers as they are when they brought in. Stephylan Green was not there, we don't think. I wouldn't testify under oath in front of Congress about attendance today because it's the first day and there's a lot you can miss in 15, 20 minutes with a bunch of guys you've never seen before. But the thought between the media members today was that Stephylan Green was not out there today. So I didn't say that he wasn't there. I wrote in my practice report that we did not see him today. Interestingly enough, consider this. It's just a different time and place. We're all aware of this in college football, but there are only there are only 6 players who were not with the team for spring football. You used to have 23 freshmen coming in the summer that were going through their first real practice on August 1st. There are 6 guys that aren't here yet. Braden Allen, Lamar Brown, that's a big name, but he's still at U-High. Des Ellis, Adrian Lamb, Isaiah Washington, and Jackson Williams are the only players not with the team currently. Like the transfers are here, and most of the freshman class is here. It wasn't a big freshman class, but most of them are here. Big Richard Anderson is here, and looking at some of the really talented players at wide receiver that they brought in are here. Like, it's amazing just how different that is. On a kind of a side note, I was talking to Michael Caldwell from WBRC about this. Like, one of the most fun times I can remember in my life was my last semester of high school. And I realized that I was in quite a different situation than these guys who were on scholarship collecting NIL money to play football, and that this is an amazing chapter and something they need to get to in their lives. Like, I completely respect that. But, like, didn't we all, like, most of us have a lot of fun that last semester of high school when you're driving and you probably, if you're going to college, you've already got that figured out. If maybe you've got a job already, and like it's not the most stressful time in your life. And then there's those last like 4 weeks where a lot of you just kind of mail it in. That was a great time. And all these guys are out on their last semester of high school. They're throwing on the pads. They're moving away from home, and they're working on football. But you've got a lot of guys out there. Lane Kiffin met with the media. I didn't think anything earth-shattering that came from his press conference today. We'll have that sound cut up and probably get into some of it tomorrow. But those are my overarching thoughts on practice today. Just for y'all's edification, it's just we're not going to have quite as much juice on a Lane Kiffin practice as we did Brian Kelly. Y'all know this, but Brian Kelly let us in there to watch scrimmages. He let us in there to watch full 90, 95, 100-minute practices. You can pull a lot on that from plays and drives and rotations, and there's just a lot to get to. Today, I watched a lot of guys running around cones. I watched a lot of guys hitting sleds. I watched a lot of guys being coached off to the side. Incidentally, Lane Kiffin was not doing a lot of quote-unquote coaching on the offensive side. Charlie Weiss Jr. and Dane Stevens were coaching the quarterbacks. They didn't have the pads on, not a lot of them tackling or anything. It's just there's not a ton of juice to that. I think that the rotations, I think that how guys kind of look in the uni, and I think just kind of monitoring some of the injury situations with specifically Levitt and Weeks, and then obviously Gabe Relaford was great to see him today. That's kind of the juice that we'll be able to give you, but just not quite as much play-by-play going to be coming from us. And again, I've said this a million times. I'm fine with that. Run your practice the way you want to run practice. You want us in there for 2 hours? Great. You want to tell us to get out of there after we take roll? That's fine with me too. Run your practice the way you think best to win games, and Lane's going to do that. I don't know that you're going to get as much video from us. I don't know that you're going to get as much content play-by-play from us from a radio perspective, from a practice report perspective, podcast, YouTube. Like, it's just going to be different, and I think y'all should be prepared for that. And again, I don't think anybody's complaining about it either. So it was good to get out there. I was telling some of the media guys, March practices a little easier for us to take in those August workouts. It's warm out there in August. March, it was a little chill in the air this morning. I had pants on, had no problem, so that's nice. And the vibes were great out there with the music going. The weather was good, and I think there's just a lot of energy out there with LSU football right now. So it's good to get out there and check that out. We'll continue to give you updates as we are allowed availability. And I know that Matt will have a lot more coming up on AFR. He was there for the entire session that we were allowed, and he was also at the Lane Kiffin press conference as well. So Get you more of that on AFR coming up as we move forward. Glen West of 24/7 was there. We'll talk to him a little bit about it in 15 minutes. When we come back, do want to move forward, move away from practice. Mansoor Delane had a great day yesterday. Does that make sense for New Orleans? We'll do that next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Marucci right here in Baton Rouge. 22 years ago, it was just a couple of former big leaguers and their trainer thinking, let's make a bat. I think we can do a pretty good job with that. And they made a bat and made a few more bats, and people started swinging the bats. People liked the bats, and they made more bats. And now those bats are the official bat of Major League Baseball. What a cool story for right here in Baton Rouge. And you can go take a tour and learn about that story. You can see where they are crafting 1,200 bats every day. You can see how they put those together, how they stain those, how those are shipped off, where they're headed. And right now, they're headed to a bunch of Major League teams that are headed to opening day in 2 days. Turn on a Major League game in 2 days, you'll see the Marucci lumber being swung around. It's the official bat of Major League Baseball. Go take that tour. Check them out online at maruccisports.com/campus-tour. Every single ticket comes with a 20% discount into the Campus Tour store and in the hitter's house. Go by and see them at Marucci.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Every week, our Tuesday shows are brought to you by Immense, to help you out with information technology. If this sounds familiar, you got one or two IT employees. They're constantly overwhelmed, constantly running around the office, constantly trying to help 5 different people at once, but never able to be 5 places at once. If that's the case with your business, contact Immense and let them help you with IT. When you think about IT, I think a lot of us, myself included until last week, think about, hey, my computer is frozen. Like, please help me figure this out. I can't get this email to work. Like, what's the problem? That's what I think about when I think about IT. And Immense can certainly do some of those things for you. But what they want to do is actually be a consultant for you and help you to grow your business using technology. They're a partner when they talk about helping you with IT. It's not just fixing broken computers. It's making sure that you're optimizing your ability to use IT to grow your business. You want to do what you want to do. You want to do what you're specialized in. You want to do what your business is designed to do. You don't want IT slowing you down, but it can also help. And that's what Immense does. They're all Baton Rouge based, all LSU grads from the ownership side, and they can help you out from Lake Charles all the way to Covington. If you're a company from 50 to 100 employees, that's the sweet spot for Immense. They're here to help you out. They bring you my Tuesday shows. And you can find them online at immense.net. That's immense.net. Yesterday was a big day for Mansoor Delane at LSU's Pro Day. To crack the 4.4 number, I was pretty surprised. Like, I just did not. When I watch Mansoor Delane play, I think of a technician. I think of someone who plays with the proper technique and is always in position. I didn't necessarily consider him to be the most athletic guy on the field. And maybe his ability to be that technically sound clouded that judgment. Clearly, you can't be a great cornerback if you can't run and jump, right? That's very obvious. But I just didn't think of Mansoor Delane as an athlete in the class of a Derek Stingley or a Patrick Peterson. I thought of him as a cover man in their class. I was doing a radio hit earlier today with some folks in the capital city in D.C., and they were asking me about him, and I thought about this, and I said, I've watched a lot of LSU football over the years, and LSU's cranked out a lot of really, really, really good defensive backs. As far as coverage goes, I think I would go in the top tier, Patrick Peterson, Derek Stingley Jr., and Mansoor Delane. I strongly considered Morris Claiborne in that and probably could put him in that category. And those guys are just a tick above the next category, which I would put Greedy Williams, Tre'Davious White in. I would consider Thurl Simon in his prime there in 11 and 12 to be in that category. I think you could look at some other guys like Christian Fulton, who had a really good run. Corey Webster's absolutely in that category as well for me. Like, there's a lot of really good ones, but the point of that is not to individualize. It's to look at Mansoor Delane and go, he's in the top tier. Whoever you want to put in the top tier, you want to put Corey in that top tier, I feel you. there are guys that absolutely fit there. But Mansoor Delane is in that top tier. And then for him to run a sub 4.4 yesterday was jarring. So you look at a guy who, and this is my favorite stat, I'll continue to use it. I'll use it long after he's gone. He allowed 2 first downs this past year. Two first downs in coverage this year. He's the best cover corner in this draft, and he's one of the best cover corners that LSU's ever had. You can take my word for it, or you could listen to Lane Kiffin, who, when he was talking about playing LSU to the crew that was covering the game for ESPN in September of last year, and he said, that's as good a corner as we've seen on film. We're not going that way. And they went heavy on P.J. Woodland and DJ Pickett all afternoon. Just didn't want to mess with Delane. Take Lane's word for it. The question is not, though, where he ranks in LSU history. The question is, does he make sense for the Saints? And the Saints pick at 8, and you look at what they've got, and there's been an overhaul at that position. You had a kind of a good couple-year run there with Lattimore at the end of his line and Paulson Adebo, and you brought in Alontae Taylor, and like you had pretty good group at corner. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was there for a brief period, but you had really good play at corner. And Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was moved on from, and then Lattimore reached the end of his rope, and you traded him off correctly. And now, obviously, Alontae Taylor is signed elsewhere, and you kind of look around and you go, okay, we've got Kool-Aid, we've got Quincy Riley, and those are young players, but do we need to upgrade the talent level? And I would argue yes. I would say you do. And Mansoor Delane does that. Mansoor Delane is a better talent than those two guys. Now, those two guys were high-round picks. You're looking at picks in the second, third round there. But Delane is a potential top 10 guy. He's a top 10 player on almost every big board in this class. Now, do you think it's easier to find a corner in round 2, 3, 4 that can help you than it is to find an edge rusher? Maybe. There are more corners than edge rushers. There are more 5'11", 6', 6'1" guys with quick hips, fast, that can knock balls down than there are 6'5", 260 guys that can get up the passer. There just are. So is 8 too early to go corner? I would argue no. If it's a need and you think there's a Pro Bowl caliber player there, and that's what your analysis says, I say go get it. I don't think Houston regrets taking Derek Stingley where they did. I don't think Arizona regrets taking Patrick Peterson where they did. You could always take that next quarterback, but the Saints aren't taking a quarterback. So is there a big difference in terms of your franchise if you get a Pro Bowler at corner or a Pro Bowler at linebacker, a Pro Bowler at wide receiver? I think those are comparable. I find the value there. And I think that pick would be just fine. He's got the size. He's got the strength. You know now he has the speed. The tape's phenomenal. We've talked to him. He's a great representative, always gives great answers. It's hard to find a dent in Mansoor Delane's resume. And so you look at what's there. And so the hard part about this is not knowing, we'll do this after the draft's over, but what was there when the Saints picked at 8? Because between picks 4 and 10, you see a lot of shuffling. And so we can't know what will be there. But in terms of fit on the roster, talent, it's a match for New Orleans, I think. So I understand if you feel like you've got to address game-changing wide receiver and you feel way better about the first 3 guys than you do guys 6, 7, 8, 9 that you could get in the second or third round. I understand that. I understand Jeremiah Love to an extent. I understand Caleb Downs to an extent. Sonny Styles to an extent. Like, I get all those picks, and I get Mansoor Delane. I'm not giving you the firmest take, but I will suggest that I don't think you're reaching to take that position at that spot in the draft. If he is the best player on your board, and you think he is a Pro Bowler, at that age, at that cost, with what you're looking at on the roster, which is iffy cornerback play and iffy cornerback depth, I think it makes a ton of sense to go take Mansoor Delane. That's one position, cornerback, you cannot get old at because you will fall off a cliff. You can get old at guard. You can get old at quarterback. You can get old at tight end. You can get old at linebacker. You cannot get old at corner. At corner, you have to consistently have young freak athletes to man that position. Because we just saw it with Marshawn Lattimore. Good Pro Bowler, All-Pro, Pro Bowler. I can't play. Like, he fell off a cliff in 6 months. That position is demanding. So if you think you've got a guy who can play that spot as an elite number one and knock Kool-Aid McKinstry and Quincy Riley down a peg to a place that they're more likely to fit in, I don't have a problem with that. And what he did at Pro Day yesterday, running that time with the tape that's going to accompany it, somebody's going to take him in the top 12 picks. Somebody's probably going to take him in the top 10 picks. I just got off the phone an hour ago with some folks in Washington, D.C. that think Washington may take him with the 7th pick. He may not even be there. But I think it makes sense to make that happen. So we'll see if New Orleans looks in that direction. Any way you slice it, Mansoor Delane going to be a rich, rich fella. 30 seconds, Jordan. You like Mansoor Delane for New Orleans there? You need to go to a different position.
I just think the Saints are in a position where they have you're like a kid in a candy store. You really can't go wrong. You can get a Mansoor Delane, you get a Bane that falls, you can get a Jordan Tyson. It's just maddening how long the draft is from now. And
it's a month away.
Yeah, and
which
that's crazy.
I could not believe when I looked that up today.
Oh, that's crazy. And we have to keep doing this. And it's like, can we just get to the draft? We got the numbers, we got the measurements and all this. Let's just draft. I'm ready to draft. So I'll take Mansoor Delane to make a long story short. Yeah.
All right. They'll draft eventually. It's just going to take another month. Come back with Glen West. He was at practice today. We'll talk some baseball with him as well. It's next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. You know, closet space is not something that everybody considers all the time. I certainly didn't when I bought my first home. And then my wife-to-be moved in and said, this is not going to work. So we could have called David Duvall One Bath and Closets, but we knew we were going to move with kiddo number 2 on the way. You don't have to move to improve your closet situation. Call David Duvall. He can customize a closet for you. That may mean building a whole new one. They can do that. It may mean just using your space more efficiently with some features that you currently don't have. David will sit down with you. He'll go through your needs. You'll fill out a questionnaire. He'll know what you're looking for, and his design and his execution of that is going to be customized to your specifications. It's going to be functional. It's going to be beautiful. Check out the work. It's at onebathandclosets.com. You can see pictures of the great work. If you need more closet space, you're too cluttered, let David Duvall handle it from here. It's David Duvall at One Bath and Closets. They're online at onebathandclosets.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
We're going to talk some football as well as some LSU baseball with Glen West here shortly. Let me tell you about my friends at the Highland Insurance Group first. HighlandIG.com is the website. Jonathan Carbo and his team are phenomenal to work with in the insurance game. They're an independent broker. That means they've got access to dozens and dozens of carriers. No matter what your business does, no matter what line of work you're in, they've got a carrier that fits for you. And that means in terms of the premium that you're looking to pay, as well as the coverages that you need as a business. And oftentimes, business owners aren't exactly sure what they do need from an insurance perspective. That's why you got to trust your broker. At the Howard Insurance Group, you can trust your broker to make sure your coverages are in place. The last thing you want to do is pay what you believe to be a significant chunk of money in premium and then not be covered on the other side because you just looked at the price tag. The Howard Insurance Group will work with you to make sure that you're covered properly. Trust them like you trust your attorney. Trust them like you trust your CPA. Trust your insurance broker in that same way. Jonathan Carbo and the Howard Insurance Group can do that for you. They're based here in Baton Rouge. They can help you out statewide. It's the Howard Insurance Group. They're online at HighlandIG.com. Let's welcome in Glen West, senior writer, Go 24/7, Talking Tigers. Glenn, how are you?
Doing great, Hunt. It's been a little while. It's been a few hours.
It has been just a couple hours there. Today, just a more comfortable day on the Ponderosa than those mid-August afternoons. Where'd your eyes go first when you hit the Ponderosa?
Yeah, we immediately walked in and took a right, and we were kind of on this near field closest to the where we were allowed to enter, and so LSU went through and did their kind of their hurry up or their kind of walk through drill, I guess you call it, there with 11 on 11. You saw Husan Longstreet out there getting some reps, but very quickly kind of learned that was the second team because I think the first team was on the far field, and so. But it was really cool. It was good to see just the guys out there. I thought the vibe and the energy was certainly up, and it's a new era of LSU football, and excited to kind of really dive into the spring here and get a look at this team. It was mostly individual drills today, so only about 20 minutes, but everybody seemed to be looking all right and moving well, and I thought it was a good overall start to the spring.
Lane Kiffin met with the media after practice was over. Did anything that he said specifically stand out to you?
Yeah, I thought there were a few interesting things. I thought, one of the questions that was asked to him was specifically about Trey'Dez Green and just kind of where, his development is as a player. And I thought that he took that question and kind of built upon it by including a couple of other really impactful players I think LSU is going to have this year with Jordan Seaton at left tackle and then Ty Benfield, the safety. Just talked about kind of how they have a very ultra-elite skill set, but also an ultra-elite mindset that those three players have. And so I thought that was one of the more interesting takeaways because, I think most people figured that, Green and Seaton would be kind of at the top of this thing offensively. And, Benfield's also a new guy that they're bringing in defensively that they are very high on. And so those three guys seem to be, guys that they're going to be really leaning on as leaders. I thought that, the plan for the quarterbacks is smart. It doesn't sound like Sam Levitt's going to do things to, overly, stress that leg as he continues to work back from that injury. So you're going to see a lot of Longstreet. You're going to see a lot of Landon Clark. And I thought, Clark today also had some really good looking throws. They did some, they're not throwing against competition right now. They're just kind of throwing to the receivers and getting the timing and the distance down on some of the throws, but they were able to complete some good long balls today as well. So really liked the kind of the first, kind of start for this program and kind of the start for this spring. And I think Kiffin's, gonna be, handling this the way that he needs to here going forward.
What did you think of Lane Kiffin's response? I forgot who asked it. I would credit, and you'll probably remember, about the question about it's just different, and about him being in the community and about his interactions at Junior Day. Like, what did you take from all of that as Lane has kind of immersed himself in Louisiana over the last 4 months?
Yeah, that was actually the last one that I got into him. So that was, it was a good response there. And look, I think that any coach that comes into LSU, I think a big part of it is just embracing what this culture in Louisiana is all about. And he talked a lot about, this Junior Day that they had this past weekend with a lot of 2027 and 2028 prospects from the next couple of recruiting classes, many of them from Louisiana that they were hosting, and just talked about the parents' messages and the parents' questions that they had for the staff members, and just how, central it was to, if my kid comes here and he puts in the work, and just is there going to be that opportunity for him to play early in the program. And, that he mentioned just kind of how that was maybe a little bit different than what he has heard in recent years with kind of the NIL and the money and the transfer portal and all the financial elements to college football now. And so, he talked a lot about how, this state just has a presence about it, and the players that come out of it that he really wanted to be a part of, and I think you're going to see him recruit to here going forward. So, I thought it was a good answer and something that obviously he's leaned into on his social media fronts, the Just Different hashtag and all that stuff. So that was really cool to hear.
Something I've noticed with his press conferences at Ole Miss and now to start at LSU, as long as you're not talking about injuries or strategy, if you ask him a question, he will actually think about the answer and give you the answer that he believes in. It's not just a ton of coach speak unless you get to injuries or strategy, which he won't go into at all. But like you asked that question, he gave like a 2-minute answer that involved just a lot of firsthand information. I thought that was pretty cool and something we can file away for later when asking questions. Let's transition over to baseball, Glenn. The Tigers lose their third straight weekend, lose the second 2 games to Oklahoma. How much trouble are they in?
I think they're in some trouble here. I mean, like, it's just, if it's, one thing, if it's not one thing, it's the other here with this team right now. It seems to be kind of a whack-a-mole in terms of just how they're going to be able to get all three phases of the game, in sync. I thought the pitching was as good as it could, as good as you could have possibly expected for the most part this weekend, or this past weekend. But the offense just really failed to kind of rise to the challenge here this past weekend. They just didn't have a lot of consistency, really from top to bottom. I mean, some of the younger guys like Omar Cerna was, I think, the leading hitter on the weekend for LSU. Jake Brown only had one hit. Garrett Curiel only had 2 hits. Stephen Milam, I think, had 1 or 2 hits. Like, when your best players are just not swinging the bats the way that you need them to, it's going to be really hard to win games consistently in the SEC. And, I thought Casey Evans got them off to a phenomenal start there in that Thursday game. But, Friday and Saturday, for whatever reason, they just weren't able to make the knockout punch when they really needed to. And that's been concerning. I think the defense, you saw a lot of the rotations that you've seen here the last couple of games, or really the last several weeks, where you just tried to put Stephen Milam in the best position possible because that's where you think the ball is going to go. That's really what they've been leaning into here, and I think it tells you how much work they have to do in the rest of the defense and the rest of those defenders, getting the right plays and making the right reads and the throws and making the right catches. There's a lot that I think needs to be improved upon right now with this group. And honestly, I think for me, it starts offensively. Like, you had a couple of really solid innings at Vanderbilt, but outside of that, it's been very hit and miss on just what you can expect from that group going into a game.
When you look at the offense and you look at the guys who have rotated, that's Caraway, it's Dardar, it's Reeves to an extent, York, Braun, like those guys at third, second, first, DH. Like, who are the most likely candidates to give some stability and some production in your eyes?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think probably the one guy that also we could maybe throw in there that hasn't had as much opportunity recently that I would, think maybe get some here in the near future is Braden Simpson. I think he's somebody that you could certainly work in and give him an opportunity. Honestly, for me, I'm looking at John Pearson right now. I think, he had a decent weekend. I think the one thing with him is just, whenever he's not getting hit or getting on base, it's usually a strikeout. And so he's got to clean up some of the strikeouts that he's had. But I thought, gave them some pretty consistent at-bats the first 2 games this past weekend. And then, honestly, I'm very curious to see how much they lean into Omar Cerna at first base. It was just a 1-game sample size that we saw here. He's not leaving the lineup, but I think the interesting part here was that he played designated hitter, played catcher, played first base. Is there going to be an opportunity here for him whenever he's not behind the plate to play first base a little bit more consistently and maybe give them something there from an offensive perspective that they just weren't getting? So I think he's one to watch, but I think, honestly, Pearson's a guy that has to step up. I think Trent Caraway has to step up at some point, but those are probably the 3 that really stick out to me as guys that I think really need to kind of step up and be more consistent offensively for LSU.
I mean, Simpson hit 389 with 22 homers last year at High Point. He was in the top 10 in the country in slugging and doubles, and this year he's 7 for 24, which is 292. You're not going to win a Gold Glove anytime soon, but if they are looking for offense, I wouldn't hate putting him out there.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think if you're looking for offense, he's somebody that you have to give an opportunity to. And I think, look, at the end of the day, too, I think a lot of this would be a little bit more, palatable if your best players were playing like your best players. I don't think that they've had the consistency that they need to from some of the top guys that have been through this before, once if not twice. So I think they'll get it together. It's just a matter of when that happens, and you're kind of digging yourselves into an early hole here because the schedule is just not going to let up here after Kentucky and with a lot of the series that you have coming up here on the road. So it's going to be really important that the offense really tries to get it together here sooner than later.
We'll see. Tigers and Tech tonight at 6:30 from the box. Thanks, Glenn.
All right, thanks, Don.
Glenn West, senior writer at Go 24/7. We'll come back and close the hour up with one player who is making some waves with LSU football very, very early on. We'll talk about it next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
First American Bank and Trust. First American Bank and Trust. You can find them online at fabt.com. You can find them in person all over the place because there are 26 locations throughout Southeast Louisiana, always one near you, whether you're in St. Tammany or Tangipahoa up the I-12 corridor or down the bayou, St. John, Lafourche, Terrebonne. No matter where you are, First American Bank and Trust is never too far away. So if you're looking for a commercial loan, First American Bank and Trust. Looking for a personal loan for a new home, First American Bank and Trust. Every decision that's made by First American Bank and Trust is right here in Southeast Louisiana, all of them. So you're never a line item for some call center in Chicago or over in Atlanta. It's all right here in your community. But not only is it just a community bank, it's not a mom and pop shop. 25 locations in Southeast Louisiana. They've got the resources you need for your commercial lending. So First American Bank and Trust. Find them online at fabt.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Closing up hour number 1 here. We're brought to you by Immense. Check them out for all your IT needs. Immense.net, immense.net. Hat tip to Wilson Alexander, the Advocate. He asked a question of Lane Kiffin today, and he prefaced it by saying that Jordan Seaton had, quote-unquote, changed his body. You're all aware of Jordan Seaton, former 5-star recruit, top 10 player in the country, 2-year starter at offensive tackle for Colorado, comes in to kind of be the anchor at left tackle for this LSU team in 2026. And Lane Kiffin talked about the talent that Jordan Seaton has, as well as the mindset that he brings each and every day. And he lumped him in with Trades Green, lumped him in with Ty Benefield. But I'm speaking about Seaton in this segment here because Kiffin spoke so highly of his work ethic, and we know what the tape says, what the Pro Football Focus grades are, what the recruiting analysts thought, and that he's very likely a first-round pick in the next draft to come. But I did not see Jordan Seaton on the practice field today. I don't have time in 15, 18, 20 minutes to go look at every single player on the practice field. You got to kind of find a spot and look. So I didn't see Jordan Seaton today. But Wilson brought up the body transformation. So I just looked up the numbers. And I pulled up Colorado's website from last year. And Colorado listed Jordan Seaton at 330 pounds, which is not abnormal for an offensive tackle. Plenty of offensive linemen play at 330. So that doesn't catch my eye until I pull out the sheet that LSU gave us entering practice today, and I see Jordan Seaton listed at 6'5", 307. That's down almost 25 pounds from what he was listed as last year. Now, I don't have a scale in Boulder, and I don't have a scale on Jordan Seaton here in Baton Rouge. I can't verify either of those numbers, but sounds like it's real because Wilson asked Lane Kiffin about it, and Lane Kiffin said Seaton's up here all the time. He's constantly working. He's asking the right questions, and it makes a lot of sense, right? This is a guy in his money year. Not that he's not making money right now, not that he wasn't making money at Colorado. He's making a lot of money this year, but the NFL's calling in 13 months. That's real money. And it seems like he's taking things very, very seriously. When I was thinking in my head, when I was thinking about Jordan Seaton playing left tackle for this LSU team, honestly, the scene that came into my brain, and it's burned into my retinas, back into my brain, was in the first quarter against Texas A&M this past fall with Carius Curran at left tackle. Nussmeier took a snap, and they got the SEC Defensive Player of the Year lined up right across from Carius Curran. And Cassius Howell comes flying off the edge. Curran never lays a finger on him. Nussmeier gets planted and fumbles. And I was thinking, that dog will not hunt. If you're trying to go 10-2, if you're trying to go 11-1, if you're trying to win big-time games and get to the college football playoff and make a push at this thing, which is LSU's general expectation. Doesn't mean they're going to reach it, but is a general expectation year in, year out. You need somebody on the left side that's never going to let that happen. And Jordan Seaton doesn't let those things happen. He's not perfect. Will Campbell wasn't perfect, but they're damn good. And Jordan Seaton, it appears, is taking that immense talent level that he had in high school that made him a top 10 player in the country, that he had when he was a freshman starter at Colorado, when he was a PFF rock star in pass protection the last 2 years, that the pro draft scouts see and that LSU has identified. He's taken all that talent and now is dropping 20 pounds in 3 months? That's real stuff. So we can overreact to so many things that we see in spring ball. This guy dropped this pass. This guy's arm looks good. This guy fills out the uniform. Did you see how good he was moving? Lane Kiffin said this about this guy. And you can overreact to so many things in spring football, and it is just spring football. But when a guy comes in with that kind of talent and puts in the work to immediately drop 20 pounds, you know that he's for real. He's taking this seriously. And at this point, like, what else can you want? You're not going to win any games anytime soon. You're not going to lose any games anytime soon. You're not doing anything of consequence to the fan, to the analysts, to anybody in the college football world that's outside of the actual program until August. This is 3 weeks of see what we got, see who looks good here, who looks good there. This is getting a baseline for what we need to start with on August 1st. Seton is where you start the offensive line. And it looks like it's a real good spot to start the offensive line for LSU. I had no idea that this was something that was going on, and we wouldn't because this has all been done in the shadows. But it was evident to Wilson Alexander to ask the question today, and now if you just do 2 quick clicks on the internet and see what Seton weighed at Colorado last year, what he was listed at, and what he's listed at here for LSU, that's a stark difference. And I think you've got one of the best left tackles in college football on your roster entering the season. That's a pretty good place to start when you've got that much talent at wide receiver, that much talent at running back, and a quarterback who's won some pretty big games in his time in college. So it's not something I anticipated talking about today. I anticipated talking about Sam Levitt's foot. I anticipated talking about what Lane Kiffin had to say at the podium. I anticipated talking about what Blake Baker was doing on the defensive side of the ball and some of the other things vibe-wise at practice. I did not know we were going to be talking about Jordan Seton dropping 25 pounds at left tackle, but here we are. It's a big, big deal for LSU, and he's going to be a heck of a player for the Tigers in this fall. That's it for hour number 1. If you missed any of the football, Hunt on LSU is where you can find it. We'll take a timeout. Come back and preview baseball.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Ochsner wants to tell you that it is Colon Cancer Awareness Month here in March. It's important. Why is it important? Well, colon cancer is very, very common relative to other diagnoses, but it's preventable and treatable when you catch it early. And screening, especially colonoscopies, can detect precancerous polyps before they turn into cancer. So when you turn 25, it's time to start. And if you have family history, probably need to look into starting a little bit earlier. Just contact your primary care physician and ask questions. Colonoscopy, again, is the gold standard, but if you're at low risk, there may be some other options for you. If you don't have an established relationship with your primary care provider, that makes all the difference. Make that happen. They can get you involved in the right screenings at the right time. Schedule an appointment at Ochsner.org/schedule. That's Ochsner.org/schedule. And take these things very, very seriously. Again, if you're creeping into your mid-40s, might be time to look into it. Check it out at Ochsner.org.